right, welcome back. We're gonna have another great episode today. Any teasers for the audience? What do we got in store?
I think we're on a road trip today. We're leaving the university. We're going up 460 to Christiansburg to pick up one of our guests that used to work with us a plethora of years ago.
Awesome. Well, let's get started.
All right, here we go. And away we go.
All right, on the road.
So we're driving to Christiansburg today to what was the old courthouse. Were you a police officer here when the sheriff's department building they're in now, it used to be the courthouse?
No, I think as long as I've been here, they've been in a new courthouse. A lot of changes over the years, though. Now they've got some more construction going on over there to get a improved magistrate's office.
Oh yeah, so I really like, when I came to work here, where I used to work, we had what we call a sally port, and it was where the police car could drive into a secure area. The garage doors would go down, and if you had a prisoner, you could take the prisoner out. It was more secured, and they're building one of those, which I think is really cool, attached to the jail. And then they're going to build a magistrate's office, and then what was the other one? Juvenile intake, I think it is.
Oh, maybe so. I'm not sure about that one.
Juvenile services. Yeah. So what's the difference between a magistrate and a juvenile intake?
Well, I'm glad you're asking MJ of MJ's Legal Corner fame. So in Virginia, just for the listening public here, if a juvenile is taken into custody and needs to be charged with a crime, the state wants to treat that differently than adults, really wants to try and work on education, finding a way to keep juveniles out of the court system, out of the legal system. So they actually don't go before a magistrate. That's who an adult would go before if they're charged with a crime, arrested. They go before a juvenile intake officer. They're trained differently, have different kind of powers and authorities, and kind of the whole system uses different terms about people being committed to jail. So they really try and find a way to not put a juvenile into jail that night unless there's some very, very serious crime going on, something like that. They try to find a way to get them back with the parents, make sure they get a summons to come to court instead of being taken to custody and all that.
The roundabouts that we have here, especially the one here on Southgate, we have two of them, and sometimes you see police cars parked up on the stone there in the roundabout facing up the hill. Yeah. And sometimes that's just deterrence. People coming in, seeing the police car and slowing down.
Yeah, I think unfortunately some people kind of get the idea of like, well, I'm heading to work and it's fine to just kind of speed until I get to where there's buildings and everything, but really gotta these roundabouts are designed for the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit to keep everybody safe there.
And you don't really, when you're traveling around, I don't see a lot of accidents in roundabouts, nor do I hear officers get dispatched, unlike red lights. So, Blacksburg has a few roundabouts. We have a few. I was the same way with you. When I became a police officer in 1987, in Newport News, we had a huge roundabout at a major intersection, the biggest one I've ever seen, and they did away with it. And but roundabouts are coming back. I think, isn't that an English thing?
Yeah, I think it's bigger over in Europe for sure, but I think it's really catching on. I think, to the best of my knowledge, the kind of studies and research shows that it's generally a safer intersection in a lot of cases. Some cases it doesn't really work out. You can't put them everywhere, but generally, if you can put a roundabout in, I think it works out pretty well for everybody.
So we're going to pick up Randi Palmer. She was a dispatcher here when I came. I came in 2009, so I'm not exactly what year she came. But she was at the old police department here at Virginia Tech, and the old dispatch center was a lot smaller here than the current dispatch center, which is, what about this dispatch center that's in Christiansburg?
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear more about it from her, but it's at the top of the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office building, good central location, and I've visited there a few times right next to the jail there. Sometimes a little harder for Virginia Tech officers to get out there and visit when it's outside of our jurisdiction, but if we have a chance to be needing to go to court, go into the magistrate's office, then it'd be a good opportunity to visit them. I've always been really impressed with our dispatchers' knowledge of all of the jurisdictions that they cover. We get into very, very specific locations on campus. They're trying to get us to that potential emergency very quickly, and and they have a very good way of describing things. You go to a certain building on campus, such as Pritchard Hall. It's a pretty big, noticeable building, good street address, makes a lot of sense how to get there. Whereas, say someone perhaps gets injured in an accident in a agricultural building that's way out in our farm area, it's going to be challenging to describe what exactly the building is, where the emergency is. But I've always been impressed by their ability to describe it accurately, even on these kind of more obscure areas, and get us there quickly. That's always been something I've found that they've done really well.
Technology has changed a lot since 2009 as far as dispatch capabilities. I mean, they can actually track a police car. They dispatch to a location, and your police car is on a blip on the map for them, and they can see, okay, you want to make a right turn here, kind of thing. If you call or you radio, hey, can you give me more directions? In 2009, when I came here and I started working with students, doing community outreach, first thing I would say when we had our own dispatch center, the first thing when you call 911 is tell them where you're at.
Yeah.
And don't just say I'm on Washington Street. Say I'm averaging attack on Washington Street, because there could be 2 or 3 Washington Streets in the county. But now the ability to pinpoint a 911 call, sporting events, prime example, basketball, football, they accidentally push 911, and the dispatcher, they can see very close to where they're located.
And I'd love to hear more about it from Randi, but they have capability if there's an emergency and someone dials 911 and then drops their phone, unable to tell dispatcher where they're at. They have some abilities to an emergency situation, triangulate your phone to get you that emergency help, even if you can't speak or something happens. It's definitely really helped people out in a lot of situations where otherwise they wouldn't know where they are.
Some new things in Blacksburg too, off campus. I believe in school zones now, I believe they've installed cameras.
Yeah, I drive through Montgomery County a lot, and kind of my daily commute out near Eastern Montgomery High School. They have those, and it's my understanding they're operational, and that's when the school zone lights are flashing, they'll do speed cameras, and I think it's a pretty good idea. It helps save the manpower and helps keep our kids safe.
In some jurisdictions, localities in Virginia, school buses have cameras on them for when vehicles drive past the stop signs.
Yeah.
That are mounted to the bus, and then they send out a ticket. So the police don't necessarily just stop and give the person a ticket right there, because we can't be everywhere.
And people have some different opinions on whether or not it's appropriate to use these automated tools or not. But like I said, I think a lot of people are on board when it comes down to keeping the kids safe. That's a lot of people can get on board with whatever tool we can to make sure that drivers are being safe around children who might not be quite as aware, paying attention when they're crossing the road.
And some people, I've heard, are not parking on campus, that they're parking at the parking rides, and they're catching the bus, the smart bus, into Tech. Some people live in Roanoke and work at Tech or doing the bus. Great way to take a nap, get work done instead of driving, less wear and tear on your car.
No, when I was a student at Virginia Tech, I made use of those kind of intertown bus systems, and they've only expanded since then. So sometimes people don't remember. They just think like, oh, I gotta catch an Uber. That's the only way I can get around if I don't have a car, or if I'm trying to go between towns. People know about the bus system in town, but they'll forget that you can get between towns. And it's super convenient. It doesn't run, quite as often as the in-town bus system, but still, when I used it, schedules were easy to find, it's on time.
So we're in downtown Christiansburg. We are about to find a place to pull over so we can pick up Randi and drive her around a little bit, and then we're gonna find a location to park and have some conversation. Works on this side.
All right, you're up front there.
All right, MJ. We are pulling out from the sheriff's department across the street, and we're going to drive around a little bit, and then probably go to the park and ride.
Yeah. All right. So have a special guest on board, ma'am. If you'd introduce yourself to our listening audience. Who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Randi Palmer. I'm a communications officer at the NRV 911 Center. I've been there since our merge in 2016. So I oversee the daylight alpha shift. So I'm there Monday through Friday, or I wish actually I was there Monday through Friday. I'm there permanent daylight. I have a crew of anywhere between 6 and 9, kind of just depending on our staffing at the time. But basically, I just work with the other 3 supervisors, and we just help make sure that all the operations are underway. And I still act as a working dispatcher as well for the 4 police agencies and 11 fire rescue dispatch agencies.
Okay.
So you started at Virginia Tech in, did you say 2012? Is that what I heard?
Yes, that's correct.
And were you a dispatcher before you did that?
I was, yes. I had
Really?
dispatched at Rafford City for a little while before that.
Gotcha. And so, Virginia Tech, our dispatch center was a lot smaller.
It was very, very much smaller than what we have now.
So what's the we'll probably talk more about this, but what's the big difference between the two besides the size of the space? What did you like about the Tech small dispatch center compared to where you're at now?
So the biggest difference is kind of functionality and how we operate. I mean, the job itself is really the same. What I really missed when I worked at Tech was just the really closeness that we had with the officers. I do really miss having them, come in and hang out at the end of shift, or whenever we had downtime, or just having that one-on-one a little bit more frequently than what we get now. That's one of the biggest setbacks. As you know, we're stationed out of Christiansburg, so we're a lot farther from the Blacksburg Police Department as well as Tech. So we don't have that opportunity as much. That's the biggest difference for me. Now, outside of operations, the biggest difference is kind of how we operate, whereas back at Tech, a single dispatcher, for the most part, handled everything solo. At the 911 Center, we have designated call takers, police dispatchers, and fire rescue dispatchers. So the job itself is a little bit more divided up and shared amongst the staff that are on duty. But all in all, everybody has the same skill set and the same ability to do the same job. It's just how we do it's a little bit different.
So you dispatched at Radford City.
Yes.
What brought you to dispatching? Why did you want to be a dispatcher? It's a very challenging job. There's a lot of stress that I don't think people understand or think about.
Yes, it's a very stressful, challenging job. It's very rewarding. Personally, it's not one of those jobs where you get a lot of recognition for. But I actually had no idea that I had wanted to do anything as far as dispatch goes. An opportunity presented itself with a fellow friend that I have, and she introduced me to the dispatching career, and it's just been history since. And it's been really incredible. It's been very challenging, but it's been very rewarding, and it's been a very great career for me.
So you're a supervisor there. So tell us about that. How long have you been a supervisor? What are some of the challenges that go with that, and the rewards?
Yeah, so I've been a supervisor actually since we merged. So I've been a supervisor since 2016. It's been great. I enjoy mentoring other people and kind of being the voice for those that are, that work before me. So that's been great for me. It's kind of challenging at times just because I'm still in a very working, on the floor capacity. So I really have to balance my abilities as a supervisor as well as a working dispatcher. So that's my biggest challenge. And I know that's not necessarily any different than, a supervisor on the road. But it's just our call demand and things like that are pretty heavy. So that's the biggest challenge, but I truly love what I do, and I enjoy working with my staff. And, I work on other shifts too, and it's great to work with the other shifts. And so I really enjoy that a lot.
So your husband's a police officer, and how were you able, or you in a position to where when he was on shift work, you could work the same shift hours, opposite shift hours, depending on other needs, family needs, and things like that?
So being in a law enforcement family, it has its own challenges. But we did have the opportunity to work on the same rotating days, so that allowed us to enjoy the same days off. There were challenges, as far as working together just on the same shift, as far as, of course, I was going to be the first person to handle if there was any type of issues or safety concerns or anything like that. So being at the forefront of that, knowing that I was going to be the one that potentially answered the call for my own spouse, that was always a possibility. But it was very nice being able to work with both of our agencies and being able to work together as far as on the same rotation, so that we could have a good home life. And it worked well with us being able to be partners, so to speak, in a line of duty at our job. So it worked well.
I guess we found a destination here. Might switch up our.
Yeah, we can go in the back and sit down and talk and chat some more.
All right, so we changed our setup a little bit, but yeah, I guess a question for me and for people listening. Tell us a little bit about people who have questions about 911 dispatching. What's kind of the base of the job? You're in Montgomery County and someone calls 911, it goes to you all, and how does it go from there?
Yeah, so essentially, if you're calling from a cell phone and you're within Montgomery County, or if you're calling from a landline within Montgomery County, your call will come into our center. You will be answered by any one of the dispatchers, and we basically just process your call, based off of what it is, whatever your emergency is, or even if it's not an emergency. Basically, we just ask you, what it is that you're calling for, how can we help you, and then we filter that and dispatch that, so to speak, with the appropriate resources that you are calling for. So whether it be a life-threatening emergency or whether just, maybe your car is disabled, whatever the case may be, we send the necessary and appropriate resources to send you that help. And most of the time, people that call into 911 or even to dispatch in general, it's often said that, it's their worst day of their life, and we're there to try to help mend that situation for them and get them the help and resources that they need. Most of the time, those individuals aren't actually familiar with the situation that they're in. So we're here to just facilitate whatever help they need.
Law enforcement, past few years, is challenging to recruit and keep people. And so a lot of departments across the country are doing different things. I would imagine 911 centers, dispatch centers across the country struggle too with sometimes getting people, keeping people and things like that. What are the advantages, or how do you recruit for the 911 center? What are some of the strategies?
So, we do a lot of online recruitment, Facebook and other platforms like that. We try to do your general basic stuff, but we also really try to get out in the public a little bit. And whenever we have some of the farmers markets and things like that, we try to get out there. Dispatch is not one of those jobs that people really understand. So it's really hard to kind of display it. You can't just say, do you want to be a dispatcher? Because nobody really truly understands what that means. So whenever we have an opportunity to try to actually explain that to the community, or, put on a little video or talk with people in the public, that's really the biggest way for us to try to communicate that. But really the digital platforms are our biggest help to try to recruit.
How old do you have to be a dispatcher?
So 18, you just have to be 18, and the process, and it's very similar with any agency. It's a little bit of a lengthy process. It's not too bad, but it's not your ordinary, run-of-the-mill, let me just go put an application in somewhere. So there is a process, and there is a testing phase, and there's some other steps that you have to take in order to be qualified for the position, but it's not anything outlandish. We're just looking for you to have a good, clean background and, just a stable criminal history and things like that. So we don't ask a whole lot. It's not anything more than probably your standard job.
Dispatchers go to the police academy and have a dispatcher training school,
Yes.
And if so, how long is it?
So it's a week long. It's a 40-hour course. It's very intimidating to a lot of our new guys. So I do teach down at the academy on occasion, and it's bittersweet to see everybody come in and they're frightened, and it's just it's reassuring to see how many people we actually do have in the community that put in for this job. Like I said before, it's really rewarding, and it's challenging at the same time, but it's a great career to get into if it's something that you're willing to to help people and you have a desire for that, and not necessarily maybe you don't want to be in the field, or maybe you want to start somewhere in public safety and you're not really sure where, dispatch is a really good opportunity because you get to invest your time with police, fire, and rescue, and so you're serving the community and you're doing a lot for people in multiple different facets.
And a question that I get from a lot of people for calling 911 is sometimes people I'm talking to, they might be in an unsafe situation. I'm giving them some tips going ahead. And well, what do I do if I get in this unsafe situation? I said, well, call 911. And sometimes I get this hesitation of like, well, I don't want to waste people's time. I don't feel like, right. I don't feel like my situation is an emergency. How do you all think about that kind of thing with people who are worried about wasting your time? That kind of thing?
We never think it's a waste. We are there to serve anyone and everyone, regardless of who they are, what their needs are. And like I said earlier, usually when they're calling in, it's some sort of an emergency to them. It may not be something that I would consider emergency, but everybody lives a different life, and it's, if you feel like you need help, regardless of what that may be, whether it's something very minor or something major, we are there, and by no means are we bothered by any means for anybody to call. So by any means, and any opportunity you have to tell somebody or encourage somebody to call us, absolutely.
Yeah, and even if someone really feels like, okay, definitely not an emergency, they're going to call to Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Christiansburg on the non-emergency line, but they still might need police, rescue, or fire assistance. That's routed to you all anyway, correct?
Yes, it is.
And I think sometimes people are questioning like, oh, why am I being transferred? So that's kind of the answer, right? When people call in and they want some assistance that's not an emergency, they're like, well, why am I being transferred? And the answer is so that it can go to that central place with you all, with all the resources and the answers to get them to the right place, right?
Right. So basically, for anyone who has not either become familiar with like dispatch and police, because not a lot of people are familiar with how you call the police or how you call for assistance, whether it's emergent or not. So it is slightly confusing where some people will call in, let's say, to the Virginia Tech Police Department, into the security center. And then they're like, okay, well, you got to get transferred, and they don't quite understand that. So there is a little bit of confusion on the basis of whether you have an administrative type call where you just need to maybe be rerouted to speak with a detective to a follow-up on a case or something, versus I actually have a call for service and I need to get in contact with a police officer to file a report.
So I know Christiansburg, if you were to show up at their police department at 2:00 in the morning, there's a phone or a button you push and you're talking to 911 center.
Yes.
Blacksburg, do they have, we have somebody stationed at the police department available 24 hours a day.
Correct.
Blacksburg, do they have somebody there 24 hours?
Yeah, so Blacksburg, they refer to themselves as the Fusion Center. So they have 24-hour service. That's basically like the security center. So they have representatives that handle the walk-in complaints, and that is 24 hours.
And you have to get into specifics, just maybe the type of call. What's the most memorable call that you've ever had, that you've ever worked?
So honestly, that's a question that a dispatcher is generally asked very often. And I'll be honest with you. For me personally, I don't hold a lot of my calls with me. But I will say that I think one of the most memorable for me is a 17-year-old that had gotten herself lost in the woods. And I was able to, with the wonderful access of our technology that we have, I was able to actually help direct her on the phone out of the woods. And I know that seems very minute, amongst all the grand things that we deal with and, the very critical incidents and things like that. But she actually was very thankful. She ended up actually sending me a letter in the mail thanking me, and just knowing that I was able to actually truly help her and her being so thankful for it. That's probably one of my most memorable calls.
What is, I'm thinking of 911 calls in the past, and, you get all kinds, right? I mean, you might get somebody calling you on directions on how to adjust their remote control or their television set.
Yes.
So what is the most, you have one in particular that you're like, I'm not sure why you called us, but we're going to try our best to help you or get you to where you need to go. Do you have any of those?
I have to laugh at quite a few of the calls that we get. And I'm going to be honest, and I don't want to pick on Virginia Tech, but one of the most memorable calls that I have that is just like, at what point did you think that calling the police department was going to be helpful? Was was during move-in one year, and somebody needed a hammer, and they thought that calling the police was going to get them a hammer so they could put their bed together in their dorm. So it's, we get a lot of calls that are, you just scratch your head and you're like, at what point did you think that this is, but that's okay. We provided them some assistance. It obviously wasn't law enforcement, but we helped redirect their need, and we, yet again, were able to assist them. So even if it's something completely outlandish, we do still help the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a question for you that I want you all to reveal your magic and your secrets, because we were talking on the way over that I don't know how you all do it with just your geographical knowledge of the whole county. Where I work for Virginia Tech, I'm on campus every day, but there's times when there's someone who needs some assistance way out in an odd building, and I don't really I'm not familiar with it. You all just have this ability to describe exactly where I'm trying to get to. What's the secret? How do you guys know our whole county so well, like inch by inch?
Well, so that's a good question. Over time, the repetitiveness of the calls that we get and everything, that's one of the biggest contributors to our ability to know that geography and the geographic stuff so well. But aside from that, we have an incredible program and our great mapping system, and we have really great technology that helps provide us with visual, not necessarily real time, but very accurate representations and mapping and things like that of whether it's roads or buildings, streets, things like that. And it really allows us to give you all a turn-by-turn, description of exactly what you're looking at. So it's great technology. That's our little secret.
So obviously you probably go to trainings, updates in technology for 911 centers across the country. Is there one thing that excites you about 911 centers as far as future technology? For me, I just picture one day you sending a drone first prior to the police officer getting it. Is there anything coming down the pike that you could share with us that excites you?
There are a lot of things that are being worked on in the technology world. It really depends on where you're at, kind of in the country as well as in the world. 911 is evolving all over the place, and over time, legislation has a lot to do with a lot of the way things are and how things work. But I know that in some states, even in the U.S., there are some places that have AI that are actually fielding phone calls. We haven't got that part, and me personally, I'm not sure if I would like that too much, but they're trying it out in a couple of states and seeing how that'll work. There's a lot of like imaging and video stuff. I know that at Tech PD you all have, which used to be Live Safe. I'm not sure if it's still called that now, but so Hokey Ready. So very similar to Hokey Ready, there are a lot of things that are kind of in the works where you can start sending actual photographs and videos into 911. Now, we do have text to 911 at our center. So over time, we will probably start to see more of the opportunities where you can actually send those texts and videos, or rather pictures and videos, into 911.
I can see the advantage of that if you had the picture of the suspect before you ever roll up to the call and it pops up on your MDT or your computer. Yes. I think that's awesome. Well, I think we're going to head back to drop you back off at the 911 center, and we'll chit-chat a little bit as we drive down the road, kind of thing. We do want to present you with something since it is cold outside. We want to present you. You may already have one of these.
Oh, I do not.
But our official VTPD mug,
I love
right there, with your Rolo candy inside.
Awesome,
so I'm going to present you with that.
I appreciate that.
And I'm going to give you the nice plastic to keep it safe.
Love it. Thank you.
I wouldn't put it in the dishwasher, though. I would wash it, hand wash
I'm not sure I'm going to put coffee in it.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that.
Awesome.
It's been great talking with you all.
Thank you much.
All right, we're back with another segment of Michael's Legal Corner here. We got a little tip for everybody today about speed. All right, Virginia Code 462862, exceeding the speed limit. Person is guilty of reckless driving who drives a motor vehicle at a speed of 20 miles an hour more in excess of the speed limit or over 85 miles an hour. So, Hokies on campus, what are we looking at here? What's the speed limit on most of campus?
You have 25, and I think you on the drill field, you got 15.
Yeah, 15. So watch out for those speed limits because it actually goes down to 15 in those heavy pedestrian areas. You know, obviously, we want to keep everybody safe. Driving around really fast is no good on those areas. So if you go more than 20, that is reckless driving. That's class 1 misdemeanor. That can carry some serious penalties. You want to be following the speed limit anywhere on campus, but definitely going anywhere near that is big no.
And you got to go to court because if you get a reckless driving ticket, it's not something you can prepay. You got to go to court, so you got to take time off from work. I mean, obviously, you want people to be safe, right? That's the reason you shouldn't be speeding. Right?
Yeah. And I feel like we see a lot of people. Only a few people intentionally choose to act like that, and they're going to face some penalties. But a lot of people, it's just they're really not thinking. You know, they're late to work, late to class, not thinking. But that's not a good excuse, and you're definitely going to face some penalties there. So,
was it always 20 miles? Well, we've heard the police officer was 20 miles over the speed limit. Why did they change it from a standard 20 miles over period to 85?
Well, you'd have to ask the legislature why they changed it, but I think you know, with some of the speed limits on the highways adjusting, you know, they figured if just over 80 was, you know, 11 miles over was reckless driving, so I think they adjusted that to be a little more fair on the highways. We don't have to worry about that on campus. We don't got any highways here.
You know, it's been a long time since Starter issued a speed ticket back in the day, but how do we enforce speeding for the most part? You know, there's two methods. What are we looking at?
Well, big at Virginia Tech is education. So education,
Right.
warning. Not everybody needs to get a ticket. You know, if you're making some mistakes, it's not a huge safety issue. But other than that, you can get a summons, traffic summons. You're going to come to court or pay a fine. The fines really add up. That's not something you want to be getting. So make sure you're paying close attention. And our officers out there every single day, breaks, summer, winter, double checking speed, making sure everybody's safe on campus so that our pedestrians aren't.
Now, you have radar in every one of the police cars for the most part, right? And what's the other method besides radar if you don't have one?
We got, well, I don't believe we have LiDAR yet set up, but you can be paced with the police vehicle behind you, matching your speed. Sometimes it's challenging on curvy roads or other things like that to set up the radar properly, but we're going to be enforcing speed on all the roads regardless of straightaways or not.
Well, you know, it's amazing as usual, MJ's legal corner.
Absolutely. So I hope you all enjoyed that. Make sure you stay safe out there on the road.